Okay, I want to introduce you to one of the most dynamic people I know, Jeanette Johnson. She teaches novel, short story, creative writing, along with the English Comp and Research classes at Clovis Community College. Now, being highly versatile, she has also taught German and piano. She has a unique story. Jeanette was born in Germany, behind the wall. She came to America knowing very little English. Now, she has an early childhood education and counseling degree from Germany, but she went on to obtain her bachelor's and master's degree in English composition after she got to the United States. She is also a holistic life coach and was director of Leadership Clovis last year. She is a poet and a songwriter, and this is what she is known for. Music is an important part of her background, her German heritage. But before we talk about writing, I'm going to ask her to tell you a little bit about her journey from Germany and to sing one of her songs. So here is Jeanette Johnson.
Thank you, Jen, for introducing me so beautifully, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak and share my love of language with you guys. I have only two little corrections. Number one, I was the president of Clovis Leadership, which is important because every year they switch them. So director is different, but president was just like they select you. And then the second one was I taught creative writing, and now we have a whole new beautiful instructor who has a degree in creative writing, and he stepped in and teaches these courses. So I teach basic English, I teach transitional English, I teach English composition, the second part, and the short story right now is what I'm doing. Yes, just to things shift all the time in the educational field, as we know.
Right.
All right. Now a little bit about me. I actually wrote a little poem, and let me share this with you. As we all know, Zoom is amazing and these things are possible. And so I wrote a little poem to tell a bit about myself. I call it Blessings. I am alive in the now, blessed to be living today, backed and supported by ancestors who were surviving yesterday so that I came to be. I am thankful for their strength, their resilience, thankful to be alive today, thankful for my blessings. I am breathing in, breathing out, blessed and thankful I am. So this is a little bit about, who I am and what I believe about life. And now I tell you a little bit about myself. I actually took many ideas. I looked over my little bibliography and I looked a little bit about who I am and where I came from, what I went through. I thought I'd share this a little bit with you. Let me go a little bit up so you can see it. Okay, as Jen already talked about, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. Oops, I'm so sorry, guys. I almost have it back up. 1 second, please. Let me see here. I get it all on. Okay, and where I came from, the Russians were the rulers. And I would like to share with you a little bit about the good things of being a socialistic country, the negative things about a socialist country. This is where I grew up. And I show you also two little film clips, videos on YouTube about where I came from. So back to, again, I was raised behind the Iron Curtains. And the good things were that we had United Healthcare. It was not about the profit, but about the well-beings of us. There was food for everyone, seasonal fruits and vegetables. We had environmental packaging, and we lived by the V, not only the I. We had respect toward elders and adults. We were compassionate towards the less fortunate. Theater and museums and art were known and accessible to all, which I think is important because when I moved to America, I saw that really many quotation blue-collar workers didn't know much about museums or, classical music, or hanging out in a pub, rubbing shoulders with the lawyers. But in East Germany and later on West Germany, that's how it is. We all rub shoulders. There was really no separation. So obviously, like it is very often here in this country. There was a holistic approach in school due to the motto, knowledge is power. We had music, needlework, we had gardening, working with tools, we had out in factories, we had art, math, science, German, Russian, we had government, we had PE, and in grade 7 to 10, we had 1 hour of French or English in addition to our Russian. Russian we were taught from grade 5 to grade 10. We had no homeless or unemployed or people who chose not to work. We also had no people who really mistreated their children, because if they were doing these things, if they were like, I'm not contributing to society, I don't care, they would actually reform those people. It's a subject matter we can debate, but I hear very often the people say, oh, in socialism everything was free, and so it's totally wrong. In socialism you were expected, social and communism, to partake in the well-being of society. The rents were very, very low. Women and men worked at the same salary. We all had the same salary. Oh, I'm so sorry. There we go. Let me just go a little bit more up. I'm sorry, a little bit smaller here. Oops. Let me see one more second. I'm so sorry. Let me go here. So these were the good things. One more. Yeah, we had no open pornography, which was really very. I grew up very safe, very protected, and very romantically inclined. And we also had a connection to nature, a large connection to nature. So again, this is all about socialist culture, the good things, okay, that I grew up with. Now let's go into the not so good things of a socialist kind of society where I grew up. And I tell you more about my family in a minute, but right now it's just about the overall of growing up in a socialist country. Hold on. Go up here. I'm sorry. Up. 1 second. I prepared it so well, and then it just disappears.
That's okay.
I know. Let me see. There we go. But I wrote it down. But here you see a few things. I wrote down some more on my side. The negative things were there was no freedom of speech, and churches were banned, or there was only limited access. And freedom of speech means you could not make a joke about the government, you couldn't have a cartoon about the government, you could not have a different opinion. And mind you, East Germany was built on these dreams of we are a class of society, we are all in this together, and we help each other out, and we are truthful to another. That's how it started out. But when I grew up, it was totally a dictatorship where if you ever critiqued everything, for example, the factories where only certain parts were produced, and you criticized this, you could be in trouble. Anyone could turn on and betray anyone. So your neighbors were listening in on you. If you went to school and spoke up against the government or against a governmental official, you could be betrayed, and you could be sent to children's home and your parents to prison. The travel was only in socialist countries. There was no competition, no incentive. There were the same clothes everywhere. There were no price competition. And inventions that one of the driving forces of capitalism, vice versa, weren't really made, okay? The literature was controlled, movies were controlled, the TV, art scene, and newspapers were controlled. There was only one opinion. And yes, one could say, well, with the free television that we have now, if you see what we sometimes show, it should really be kind of censored, so our youth will be protected. But this is how it was in East Germany. So I said that's why I grew up very protected. And there's points to debate. But again, there was total censorship versus here where, it's not like this. people could disappear from Monday to the next because the government didn't agree with them. They could just hang something on you and say you did this and this and this. It was a society of conformity and fear. If one of us was really different, you stood out and you could be chastised. It was a life filled with propaganda. It was a hard life for academics because the working class was preferred, even though it was said we are a classless society. But the academics who were thinkers were kind of restricted. We only had the basics for food, which in a way, we had everything we needed, but if you were to want to have, like, let's say they had bananas maybe coming in, or tiles, or special things, it was important you had connections. People stood in line for outlandish things, like if you had special tiles, and then if you knew someone, he could then help you or she could help you. It was a boring society. Everything fell apart. There wasn't much color. The politicians ruled. They even had separate jobs. And again, there were many lies. We were trained in 8th and 10th grade against the imperialist capitalists with weapons. I know you were trained too. What if the Russians would come? We were trained. What if the Americans would come? Families were divided by East and West. Entire families didn't see each other, and we could not buy everything. It was unlimited. For example, we had to wait for a car for 10 years. Now, I would like to read for you. Let me please come down with this before I then go into a song. Oh, let me stop sharing. I'm sorry. I would like to share with you an excerpt about where I talk about my family. I had a loving family and supportive, creative, well-traveled, and educated parents. And they taught us the importance of questioning the status quo. We traveled, the arts, and the power of reading. They also encouraged singing and playing instruments. We got books as gifts, and we spent a lot of time in nature. We went every year to Hungary and Czech Republic, again, another socialist country where travel was restricted to. And we visited all historical and cultural sites. And we spent time with gypsies and farmers, and we learned about the countries by living there sometimes kind of for a few days. At home, my parents would meet secretly with artists and academics to talk about the injustices in our country and to our people. We debated politics and authors and their books. And we were also talking about movies that were forbidden to be watched and the books that were forbidden to be read because we lived in East Germany. And in order to climb the career ladder, many people joined the Socialist Party or spied on or compromised other human beings. So again, if someone would stand up against their employer, they would definitely immediately be demoted, find themselves in prison, or the children would be taken away. At the end of my high school years, I was finally at my goals. I always wanted to be a teacher. I love teaching. Since I was 5 years old, I pretended to be a teacher. And again, through my years, I learned the importance of education. I learned of it. And I finally was able in East Germany. I had a spot reserved at the university, which was very seldomly, since I was academic, I was lucky to have a spot at the university. And while the first year when I went to school to be a teacher, my father suddenly decided to escape this country. He went to Cuba as a specialist, and they promised my parents they could see each other in Cuba. But then when my mom was at the airport to visit with my father, over the speakers, they denounced the contract they had made with them. So she wasn't able to go to see my dad. And my father was so enraged. He hadn't seen my mom for 6 months. He was tired of the system, that on his flight back, Germany had Frankfurt West in the capitalistic society and Frankfurt East in the socialist society. And he had to figure out to escape to West Germany. And then for 4 years, our family, my brother, my mother, and I went through hell to be able to go to West Germany. I will not tell you the details. I bet you all have seen movies. You have talked about this before. So my mom was stripped of all her rights as a teacher, an artist. I was stripped of my rights as a student. And it was just 4 long years without any perspectives, without any future plans we could make. But after 4 years, and we had only talked to my father via letters that were censored. We went to the Stasi. It's like, I'm sorry, but CIA, FBI, once a week to ask if he could be with my father. So after 4 years, he finally bought us free. And I started in West Germany, then going back to school, got my early childhood degree. And amidst many travels, I finally arrived in Clovis, New Mexico. I was married. The marriage didn't turn out very well when we moved over here. And then I found myself being a single mom. Jen was my division chair. She hired me part-time. And I was just happy to be a teacher. I went back to university here at EMU to finish my bachelor's and complete my master's. And the reason why I went back to school is that I learned very early, again, knowledge is power. And if I want to live in a country, I need to speak the language to be empowered and to have options and choices. And I still remember sitting here, I had just, there was my ex-husband sitting here on the steps, and I was with my children by myself, and I was like, I am their mother. I need to be their leader and their example. They should not tell me about English. I should tell them about English. And I'm responsible for them, and I want them to have a better life. I want them to survive in this country. So I better get my gear going and go back to school and empower students and myself and my family. So again, I learned very early that knowledge is power. And then being here on my own, I saw the need for education. And again, it was already installed in me thanks to my parents. And then I also have to say, I did nothing of this alone. I encountered amazing women, Jen for one. I'm not just putting her horn as the truth. I encountered many other beautiful females who empowered me, who guided me. When I had questions, they were there for me, they mentored me. So I was very, very blessed along the way. And I found one beautiful male division chair at EMU who was also there to support me. But most of the time it was all amazing women who were there and gave me chances and accepted me for who I was. So, but before I sing you my song, I would show you 2 more things. Again, I told you I grew up in East Germany. I would like to share with you my beautiful city. I grew up in Dresden. And if you ever have time, research Dresden. It's a beautiful city. It was a beautiful city before World War II. Let me share it with you. And okay, let me show you 1 second, please. It's just a 2-minute clip. So you see the city I grew up in, how it was rebuilt after World War II, and how it's
brought down communism.
Chanting at the top of their voices, "We are the people."
And see how people today are enjoying their freedom. After World War II, Germany was divided by the Iron Curtain into the Free West and Communist
That's where I
East.
grew up.
With the fall of communism in 1989, Germany was reunited. In the historic region of Saxony, we toured Dresden and Leipzig. We start in Dresden with fanciful Baroque architecture and some of the best museum going in all of Germany. It's a city that mixes a dynamic history with a delightful to stroll cityscape. At the peak of its power in the 18th century, this wealthy capital of Saxony ruled much of eastern Germany from the banks of the Elbe River. Saxony's greatest ruler was Augustus the Strong. To embellish his capital, he imported artists from all over Europe, especially from Italy. Dresden's grand architecture and dedication to the arts earned it the nickname Florence on the Elbe.
Okay, I will switch over in a minute. What I want to tell you too is, again, you all heard about Germany being divided between the Americans and British and French and the Russians, and we were on the Russian side. So East Germany became part kind of Russia. Russians were our rulers, and our side of Germany took way longer to be rebuilt. There were many areas that were actually never rebuilt during the Russian rule. One of the buildings was the Frauenkirche. It was the women's church, and it stayed there after World War II until around 2000. It was rebuilt with donations by the entire humanity from around all the world. People donated to have this church rebuilt. But many buildings in East Germany stayed destroyed. They were supposed to remind us, of what Hitler did to us. As children, we went to concentration camps. We looked at them. We were again reminded of our humanity. And I also, what's very kind of painful is, I don't know if you ever heard about it, but Dresden during World War II was really not a strategic city. It was an artistic town. It was still standing toward the end of the war. And it had many, 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 many refugees from all over the world. They came, had to run away from Hitler and from the winning powers. So in Dresden, on the 13th of February, 1945, we found, again, nationalities from all over the world. And what happened on the 13th of February, 1945, the powers that were destroying Hitler, luckily, they were surrounding Dresden and tried a last kind of demolition of the German kind of mental state, quotation. And what they did is they bombarded Germany or Dresden over and over and over. They bombarded it so heavily that the city burned down. There was really nothing left. And when you see me in a minute, I will tell you the story. So, and again, my mom grew up as a child during this time. My father was a child. So the city was totally destroyed. And then again, Germany was divided, and Dresden fell, quotation, in the hand of the Russians. I want to show you something, what people did to rebuild Dresden. And you see, it's a beautiful city again. It's very famous again. If you have time, you can always research. There are many museums, many famous people came from Dresden. So now I want to show you something. So after World War II, it was mostly the women who rebuilt the destroyed cities of Germany. Many men were in war. The winning forces surely helped out, but it was mainly really women who put the cities together. Show you a little clip.
Aus regelrechten Medienkampagnen, die sich in den unmittelbaren Nachkriegsjahren um sie entwickeln. Die Zeitungen, vor allem in Berlin und Ostdeutschland, berichten über die Trümmerfrauen. Sie stellen sogar Bilder nach, weil sich die Storys so gut verkaufen lassen. Die Trümmerfrau als Heldin wird erfunden. In Ostdeutschland haben Trümmerfrauen eine viel größere Bedeutung.
So the women really became a sign of strength. They did hard manual labor. And right now we are in a pandemic, and many of us are really complaining, which I understand. But if I see those pictures, I can just say how lucky and blessed we are. In the winter, they had to do this work. They only often had one set of clothes. Think about it. People from all walks of life. Women started from 14, 15 women till 60 and a bit. And then, more men came back from war. So now let me just tell you one more little story, and then sing my song finally, and then beautiful Jen can be asked a few more questions. One of the stories my mom told me, and it's really heartbreaking, is World War II, and that's why I also had my poem at the beginning. 13th of February, the bombs were falling like crazy. And my grandma had just given birth previously 2 weeks before to my youngest uncle, and I don't remember which one it was. So she was in a baby buggy. My mom's other sibling was with a piece of wood on top of the baby buggy. And then my mom was taken by the hand, she was the oldest, by my grandma. The sirens went off and bombing occurred. So my grandma ran with her 3 children to the end of the road, and there were 2 buildings, left and right. And people say, come on in, they had a basement where they could close the door and be protected from the bombings. And my grandma stood there and looked left and right, which house should I choose? And she chose the left. They had to carry the buggy down, the kids down, the door closed, and incessantly the bombs just fell. Everyone was scared, hovering together by candlelight, and the noises were unbearable. But after half an hour, the sirens went back off, which meant the bombing was over, and they were all allowed to leave the shelter and went up the stairway, got out. Their house stood, but the other house on the other side was totally demolished. So if my grandma would have chosen to go to the left side, right side, I wouldn't be here today. So this really, think about these things. I always tell this to my students too. Think about how lucky you are alive today. If your ancestry wouldn't have been strong enough against diseases or against the enemies that surrounded them maybe, you wouldn't be here today. So you were blessed to live today with all the options you have, but what do you do with them? So, and before Jen interviews me, I share with you one little thing. I actually put a text down here. Let me share with you, and I sing you one German song. I didn't write this one. It was written in 1780, and I just loved it. I put the words on the right in English, and I just sing you the first verse. I believe in the freedom of thought, again, coming from East Germany. I think that's no surprise. Die Gedanken sind frei, wer kann sie erraten? Sie rauschen vorbei wie nächtliche Schatten. Kein Mensch kann sie wissen, kein Kerker einschließen, es bleibet dabei, die Gedanken sind frei. Es bleibet dabei, die Gedanken sind frei. And the song goes on about that no one, even if you're incarcerated, can read your thoughts. The thoughts are your own, and no one, no matter what they do to you, can really take, your thoughts away. And again, coming from such a background, East Germany, and then having heard about how the working class always tried to be free of dictatorship. And the funny thing is, East Germany promised there's no more dictatorship, but it became a dictatorship, really made me aware of the power of thoughts. So I think I'm in the right profession. And now, Jen, there you go with your questions.
Yes, and certainly for any of us writers, we can say all of our background has made us what we are, and we draw on that, even if we're writing fantasy, whatever. I've read many of your works. You shared them in the short story classes that I took with you. Everything you do is so positive. All of your messages, just like this last song, if you followed along to read in English on the right side, so positive. And, you took what could have been some hardships, and there might have been other people that would have just sunk into the hardships, but you chose to use it to develop yourself, to even with your students. I know you're one of the most popular instructors there at the college because you offer such positivity to all of your students, and your background and the things you can bring into the classrooms, they're just like, well, that gives them hope for things. when you came to America, you went ahead and got your degrees in English, and because you said you wanted to empower your own children, you needed to teach them how important English was. And so here you are now teaching it at the college level. We've learned a little bit of why words are so important to you. Tell us a little bit about your philosophical views as far as what stories do for us. You've kind of brought it out with all of your past, but tell us a little bit about maybe what mental level your philosophical level of writing brings us to.
Well, I really believe that language is more than just language. This is who we are, correct? I tell my students, they say, I hate English. I'm like, how can you hate English? This is a part of you. These are your words. This is your voice. How can you hate part of yourself? And they'll also get me like, I never thought about it this way. And for me, language is not just a part of itself. Language, like you even said, encompasses everything who we are, all our experiences, the things we already experienced in the womb of our mother, right? I mean, if she is a kind mother, and if you're surrounded by a big family in the womb of your mom, you hear all these noises, you feel the positivism. So for me, language is everything. I cannot separate language from history or language from music. And this is my approach too in the classroom. I really try to include as many byways as possible. My students are connected with music. They are connected with history. Clovis, we used to have our cultural arts. It's still online, but now this program is, it used to be you went once a month. Our college put on an art show. We had people here from Austria. We had people here from different countries, right? And even Santa Fe Opera, and they performed. And I told my students, you need to go. And luckily, because of Christy Mendoza, we got free tickets. So my students were able to go and see those performances and had to write about them. For me, art is the essence of who we are. And the music of art and language is the essence of who we are. So you cannot see anything separately. History, if I talk to my students now in the comp class and we talk about the empowerment of women because of the right to vote, many students have forgotten that. If I or didn't never learn about these things. So if I show them a story, for example, the story of an owl, right? Or I show them Desiree's baby, they sit there like, why is this woman not? And I'm like, yeah, women had no rights, huh? And they cannot relate. Okay. So again, for me, it's important to include anything that surrounds us into whatever I teach, into everything that we experience. And that's my philosophy is language encompasses the world.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. And I also believe in that our environment, I'm not just talking about our social environment, I also talk about the landscape, also kind of determines who we are and how we write. I grew up in Dresden. You saw a part of it. It's a very romantic city. And I'm a big romantic, okay? I can sit somewhere and look at a leaf, and as you know, I'm also an artist, but I can see this leaf and I can see beneath the leaf and I can look at little bugs around it. And I can make it into a song or a poem or a little short story or into a dance, right? So again, and here in New Mexico, can be very desolate, but you have those little tiny flowers that still make it. And this is also the people here. They have this in there, this kind of drive, tenacity to survive in this rough environment. And they have a lot of dreams and also romanticism, but it's buried. So for me, because, the landscape shapes them. It's tough. We are not very wealthy, many people here. It's often about survival. If you look at the plants, if you're not strong, have a strong tenacity and grit, you will make it as a plant. So that's how the people are. But if I remove those layers and show them, hey, there's also gentleness. Look at this painting. Look at a baby, and make them aware of seeing the world differently. Suddenly they're like, they become gentler. They become kinder. And they realize there's more to life than, again, just the 8 to 5, 8 to 7, whatever job. So again, for me, it's language is who we are, but it also includes everything that surrounds us. That's mine. Yes.
And great answers. You talked a little bit about prompt things bring prompts to you if it's a little plant or whatever. And I know that I took a class with you, and you would, at the beginning of a class, and I know you do this for all your classes, you will hold up a prompt, and I guess you have written prompts now that you've given students, and you give them 15 minutes to write about it. That so there's no grading based on it. It's just giving them the experience of getting those words down. And I'd like to hear more about your ideas for prompt writing, as far as what you give your students each day to get them writing, and how do you have them present it? If do they have to read these, or do they just keep it to themselves and when they're done?
It's very interesting. My prompt writing has actually shifted. What we do now is, since we have realized, I have realized that many students really have less confidence sometimes than when I came here and started teaching, which was 15 years ago. And many students also do not think very deeply anymore. What I do now is I always give them a quote by someone, and then they dive into the meaning of the quote. And let's say Harry explains the quote to the people, and then Francesca says, oh, I wanted to say the same thing. I said, Francesca, you have such an amazing voice and you have your own vocabulary. We learn by listening to you. How about you share your own voice and vocabulary with us? Then we can add on top of that. So that's my first I do with my students. The second is now that since we are not in such easy times right now, I tell my students, and they actually get a grade for that one, where I ask them, please go outside, please go home and search a YouTube video and look for something inspirational, an inspirational message. And then they share this YouTube video, because I teach via Zoom. And then they tell us what made this YouTube video special for them. Why especially this YouTube video? And they have to share their thoughts. And then the other students chime in and tell us what did they think about this. I even took it so far for this semester that they actually also have to share their favorite song with us and then tell us why. And then some of them are like, Miss Johnson, it has bad words. I think it's cute that they asked me this, they warn me. And I'm like, oh, what made you choose this with those words? So it's really, one discussion is the other. And then so in between now, I have prompt writing, where for example, I put a beautiful castle from Europe on there. And I say, okay, look at this castle. I encourage you all, just write whatever comes to your mind by looking at this castle, right? Or I asked them too, like I taught students in a small community, and I asked them, okay, on your way out today, this morning, before you had your first cup of coffee, what did you find when you opened the door? And then they wrote about what they found. They had to describe it to us. We didn't see it. And then we had to guess. And then they showed us what it was. So that's how I do it now. But I have noticed, so I really try right now to hit on the critical thinking skills a lot. And then the romantic and creative writings come in between. It's like there's this flow of river of language, and I add some little islands of rocks where they have to stop and pause and really, dive in their creative side. Yes. And the cool thing is too, life sent to the right students. I always have very creative students in my classes too. So.
Yes, you do. And, I know in speaking classes, they tell you the more you speak in front of groups, the better you get. And I think the more you have prompt writings and the more you're required to write about something, whether that's one of those Clovis museums shows that you have the students go to, or a prompt writing class or prompt write-in class, they've got things that they've got to, you know, think about, and it makes them write. And if they write every day, they get better at it. I know that one of the things in teaching, and it became very big many, many years ago when I was there, we had to develop an assessment plan. Each class had to have an assessment plan. And the assessment plan was not just to assess the students, it was to assess, well, why didn't our students learn that very well? Why did they fail in this area so much? So rubrics and grading rubrics became part of the assessment. And I always liked rubrics because they pretty well spell out. I mean, in a writing rubric, one of the first thing is, well, in your short story, did you hook them, and how well did you hook them, and things like this. Tell us a little bit about maybe your writing rubrics for your creative writing classes, or the writing classes that you have, or the projects that you have your students do, and why you feel like it helps your students.
Well, let me first tell you, and I think that's maybe also interesting for Texas. Any student now in New Mexico who takes a class, be it at CCC and then transfers over to UNM, the class have to be accepted. We actually aligned our numbers and course descriptions with every higher learning facility here in New Mexico. So it used to be, you know, you took a class at our little college and went over to NMU, and they said, no, we don't accept this. They cannot do this now anymore within New Mexico, which I think is amazing. So then they came all together up to different schools. We were on committees. We came up with student goals, with student learning outcomes. So it's a combined effort. And I really love that. You know, we had an exchange of thoughts, which will grow and grow. So Noah, I'm a romantic, as you know, and I'm a dreamer. And for me, it was very difficult to accept assessment. You know, I'm not so much, I'm a logical person too, but not so much into numbers and I'm more into the flow of things. So for me, it was difficult first to put my my flowing things into a box, into something linear. Yes, but then I realized, as you said, it makes a difference. Now I want to show you what I'm doing. What I do is, and something beautiful too that happened this year, I teach short story, and it used to be, well, we start off with 10, 12 students, right? When we had our class, there weren't too many students in it anyway, either. So last semester I had 8 students. Guess what? This semester I have 19 students in the short story class. I'm so impressed because we had difficulties with filling our classes with the pandemic going on, but this class, like 19, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really, and we have many people from different states now. I want to show you, share with you, first of all, my short story, how I'm teaching online this class right now, and I want to show you how I actually created my so this is online. And I have noticed, you know, if you are an online instructor and you just have writing, people are bored. So I actually now interlude my lessons, what I put in here, with cartoons, with beautiful pictures, with whatever I can think of. So people, this is the page for our assignment. Oh, we have to, oh, Ms. Jones has some humor in here. Let me read the humor in here, okay? So just to give him a little positive. And then down here is the assignment. Okay, we have covered a few stories. So please take a piece of art and create a short story. Okay, so this is what they have to do. And here is my rubric. So this is how they use the rubric. This is what they are kind of graded on, but I tell you more about this. So here's the format of the paper. It has a title. This helps the students, you know, for the other English or other classes they have to take. The paper should be formatted. There are the elements of short story you addressed. Then the structure of the writing, how it's put together. I also look at the mechanical errors because the draft season is over. This is the real paper they turn in. And then they have to meet the expectations. And there's the point value. Now let me tell you more, please. Let me see if I can go into, hold on, speed grader, 1 second. I don't want to, let me see. There are no grading sets. No, let me show you. Names, okay, let me go down here. Test student. Okay, you see here would the paper be, and here would be the rubric would show up here. And then in the assignment comments, I also place comments. So I go into their paper, and every paper, it used to be when it was off the internet, but it was just you have your papers. I would be done evaluating a paper in, I would say 10 minutes, okay, 10, 15 minutes. Now by me going inside a paper, it takes me 15 to 20 minutes looking through this. Then I also evaluate according to the rubric. And then in here, I also do individualized comments for the students. So I would say it takes me 20 to 30 minutes now for each paper. But what I hear back from my students is they are so glad that I'm so detailed because they're growing. And you know, in the students' evaluations, they always say, I'm so grateful, Ms. Johnson, that you really took the time out and commented because I can really grow. And I have had students who actually, you know, built on what they wrote in my class and made a short story out of it or a little novel out of it. Or, you know, so it really, again, I don't see myself just as I'm the teacher. I see myself as a facilitator, anyway, more like a guidance or like a guide for their learning experience. Then I go in and give them suggestions, but I never say, you know, this is wrong. No, I just say, what do you think about this? Or please look at this. And it's like a piece of art. If someone just comes in and tears things apart, people will be brokenhearted. So I really try to let them know this is positive. This is not negative. We are growing together as a class. And in my English 11 composition classes, the beginning classes, they actually look at each other's draft together. Now, before I go out of this, I want to show you something. One of the assignments in this class is also at the end of the semester, they're supposed to share with us what author impressed them the most or what work impressed them the most. And they have to submit a little video. And I have the permission of one of my students to share with you the video they created for this class. So I hope it's okay if I show you a few minutes. Is it okay, Jen?
Oh, yes, go right ahead.
I'll show you with you. Okay, so she created this video for this class.
Edgar Allan Poe is one of the most influential authors of American literature and famous Gothic writers of all time.
Look at the setting.
He carefully crafts built imagery and sensory details in such a way to immerse the reader in the world in which he creates. Poe's writing is very deliberate, with the meaning to unsettle or challenge the reader. He has mastered the writing style of the first-person narrator. He uses the writing style in The Telltale Heart, which is one of his most well-known short stories. With the use of the first-person narrator, he is able to capture his reader's attention from the start. As demonstrated in his first sentence of The Telltale Heart, true, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am, but why will you say that I am mad? His style provides insight into the demented mind of the protagonist.
I have always been intrigued by psychological thrillers, drawn to suspense and tension of these stories, the intensity often leaving me on the edge of my seat. I would consider myself a thrill seeker. My idea of fun is conquering the tallest, fastest roller coasters, bungee jumping, diving off 10-meter platforms, and of course, watching a good horror flick. I enjoy the thrill of adrenaline and can experience these emotions through less dangerous activities such as a psychological thriller. Poe masterfully designs a suspenseful, frightening mood in his story, The Telltale Heart, keeping the reader on the edge of their seat. The narrator.
So I hope we got a little glimpse of, I mean, the students are amazing how far they take it. It's just amazing.
Well, they do. I've been in the classes with you and I have just enjoyed what every student had to offer, but you do a tremendous job with them. I want to thank you for visiting with us today, and I appreciate all the work you do in your classes with your students and with anything in the creative process. Thank you for also, anytime I mention anything that's going to go on with Capmark Writers, you always bring it up to your students. We will be having competitions in the future too, so I'll let you know. I know you always let your students know, and I know that sometimes because they're so focused on their degree and getting the work done, and many of them take many classes, they can't always submit something, but I appreciate you always letting them know, and for that we appreciate you. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us right now?
No, but thank you for having me, and I will try in the future to really connect more with you. I have some other things going on the side as well, so it's really interesting. But thank you for having the opportunity to speak about my past, the beauty of life, and just my amazing students. And thank you for all you guys are doing to keep more words in the air. And yeah, thank you so very much.
Thank you, and we'll visit again very soon.
Thank you.
All right.